Okay, so, as I mentioned, I'm Radhika. I am a research enrichment coordinator here at PSU. So for those of you who are at other institutions, you'll have another person like me at that institution who can answer these kinds of questions for you. And as Carlos mentioned, this is our third year. This is our third round of placement. So I hope that means we have it down by now. There's a couple of cohort 1 scholars here who can tell you what it was like to be a guinea pig. So if you're looking for some comparisons of what your experience is going to be like relative to theirs, they are the people to talk to. That being said, I'm going to tell you a little bit about how the research placement operates at all of the institutions. I'm going to try and give you as much general information as possible because I know that many of you will end up doing your research placement at University of Hawaii and Guam and Alaska, not here at PSU. So that being said, I will tell you a little bit about the people who coordinate the research program, many of whom are centered here at PSU, although you do have coordinators at your local institutions. So our 2 co-directors of the Research and Enrichment Corps are Dr. Cynthia Morris, shown above, and Dr. Drake Miller, both of whom are really good contacts for anyone at any institution because they know a lot about what people are going to do with their undergraduate degrees. For example, Dr. Morris is the Assistant Dean of the School of Medical Admissions at OHSU, and Dr. Drake Miller has a lot of experience in admitting people into various types of graduate programs as well as various research programs at the NIH, the National Institutes of Health, which is the body that is funding this program, the EXITO program. So I encourage you guys to seek out their contact information on the EXITO website if you have general questions about where research can take you, because it can take you to a lot of different places, which I hope you're beginning to understand from some of these RLC panels. Here at PSU, we have a couple of research enrichment coordinators. I am one of them. We also have Dr. Ellie Juarez and Katie Lazowski. We all do sort of putting together the nuts and bolts on how research learning communities are identified. We spend a lot of time trying to find research groups that will provide these optimal mentorship experiences for you guys so that you can get the most out of your undergraduate research. So I encourage you guys to seek out the research coordinators at your home institution over the course of the next year so you can learn a little bit about what types of research learning communities are available to you. We also have an excellent database of all of the RLCs at all of our host institutions on the EXITO website, so check that out. We don't actually make the placements until the spring, but the more time you spend researching the opportunities that are available to you guys, the more likely you are to end up in a placement that is well suited to you. That being said, I think most of our scholars end up in placements that they really enjoy. So let's take some time to review your timeline. You guys you've already knocked out the first part of this timeline because you're here, you're part of this program. This is sort of a confusing pathway because we have a lot of different scholars coming from a lot of different places. Some of them are here at PSU. Some of them are at our partner institutions, our 2-year partner institutions, which include the community colleges shown here, which you probably can't read, but would include PCC, Chemeketa, Clackamas, and Clark here in Oregon and Washington, and American Samoa and Northern Marianas, our Pacific Rim partners. After those first 2 years, all of these scholars will end up at one of our 4-year institutions, which include Hawaii, Alaska, Guam, and PSU, and it is at the start of that 3rd year, your junior year, in the month before the summer of your junior year, that you'll begin your research placement, which is really the heart of the EXITO program. So are you guys familiar with research? What research is? You've had some time to talk about this. I know you guys had a RLC panel yesterday with some faculty who can tell you a little bit about the process of applying the scientific method to asking unique questions in the world around you to learn things, in particular things that are related to biomedical science, which is the focus of this program. So at the end of your 3rd year, you'll be placed in a research learning community and you'll spend some time in the summer getting used to that placement so that when you begin your classes during your junior year, you'll be prepared to take on both having classes and investing 10 hours of research per week into your RLC. Then in the following summer is really where you'll produce the bulk of your work because you'll have an opportunity to work full-time in the research lab. So this is the summer between your junior and senior year when you'll be a rising senior. And during this summer, you'll spend 300 hours dedicated to the research experience. Some of that will be enrichment programming. And that is where we see scholars typically producing their best work because they've had a year to understand what research is and to develop some basic skills so they can really give a full-time effort to producing a significant body of work, which culminates at least here at PSU with the symposium where you get to present that work. So that is our timeline. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time introducing you guys to the RLC. I think you guys probably have had some of this information before, but I want to give you a sense of what it actually means, what this research placement is, and what it looks like for an undergraduate worker. So a research learning community is a name that we use here in the EXITO program to describe the infrastructure around a particular research group, which involves a lot of different types of personnel. Have you guys had a chance to interact with some of these types of personnel that you see here? I know yesterday you guys talked to PIs, which is a principal investigator. Do you guys know what a principal investigator is? Some of you do, some of you don't. That's okay, we're going to review it real quick. A research learning community has this hierarchical structure in which you have a tier of people with varying degrees of experience. Because research, it really takes a long time to become a mature researcher. I've been doing this for 20 years and I still feel like I'm new sometimes. So a principal investigator is a person who typically has an MD or a PhD or another type of advanced degree that is in charge of running the research program. And they have a lot of different responsibilities. They work with professional personnel, which can include staff scientists or lab managers or postdocs. Postdocs are people who have a doctoral degree, which can be a PhD or an MD. These are people who are on their way to becoming a principal investigator typically, although there are different career paths associated with a postdoctoral fellowship. You also have graduate students. Of course, those are people who are working on some post-baccalaureate degree. So by post-baccalaureate, I mean you've already finished college and you're working on another degree. So this can be a master's degree, this can be a PhD. In some cases, you have MD, PhDs working in the lab. So these are people who are typically pretty stressed out because they are in the building phase of their career. And they're trying to decide who they want to be. So they're trying to decide what they want their career focus to be for the rest of their trajectory in research science. And you also have, along with graduate students, you have lab technicians, sometimes various different types of staff scientists who aren't quite at the management level in the lab, who assist with the day-to-day operations in the lab. And then you also finally have undergraduate workers, which is what you guys are going to be doing. Undergraduates do a lot of different kinds of things in the lab, depending on the type of placement that you have, depending on the kind of work that you're interested in, and also depending on the level of investment that you're willing to put into the lab. So we'll spend a couple minutes talking about what that means and what that looks like for you guys. So again, bringing us back around to understanding each type of researcher in the lab. There are a lot of different people. A research program tends to be pretty extensive and expensive. I misspoke, but that was the correct word to use there. That means that you need a lot of different kind of people doing a lot of different kind of jobs. You need people who are acquiring funding. You need people who are involved in publication and presenting the research, which is often most everyone in the lab. You need people who are keeping the lights on and keeping the benches in the lab clean and keeping the chemicals ordered. And you also need people who are involved in training. That's all part of a productive research learning community. So what do each of those people do? You start with the PI, the principal investigator. This is the person that keeps the lab running. So they are in charge of getting the money. You can't keep the lights on if you're not paying your electric bill. And science tends to be, biomedical science, including social sciences, all of the things represented by the EXITO program, tends to be really expensive. So they spend a lot of time making sure that they're publishing their research. That means if people know what they've done, they are more likely to be funded. In addition to publishing research, they write a lot of grants. They tend to be really, really busy. So this is a good time for you guys to understand that if you're trying to develop relationships with principal investigators, which I encourage you to do because that's how you set up a research placement in an RLC, you might consider not being discouraged if you're having a hard time getting in touch with them, because PIs have to communicate with a lot of different people. They can be non-responsive to emails sometimes, so I encourage you to be persistent and polite. And also to be responsive to them sometimes, even if they're not responsive to you, because their time is so limited. All right, so PIs come in 3 different flavors. We have assistant professors who are either non-tenured or non-tenure track. That means they're in the earliest phase of their career. You have associate professors who are tenured, so that tends to be about 5 to 7 years after they've received their initial appointment, and then you finally have full professors who are that's the highest rank in professorship. They tend to have very mature research programs. There are advantages to working with each of these types of professors. Assistant professors tend to really have their hands on what's going on in the lab. They tend to be extremely responsive and extremely invested in the productivity of all of their personnel. So that kind of management works for some people. I found it to be incredibly beneficial when I was going through training. There's also the associate professor, who is a nice balance of being less stressed than the assistant professor, who is because they tend to be less under the gun to develop new research programs, and also they tend to already be funded. So it's really always nice to work with people who are less stressed. But they are maybe not necessarily as present in the lab as an assistant professor, because they tend to have larger research groups. And that doesn't mean that you're not going to get excellent training there. There are often many wonderful types of personnel in the lab that can handle that kind of training. And then full professors are sort of the next iteration. They tend to be extremely well funded, have extremely mature research programs. And so that's clearly the benefit of working with a full professor. Then you have your professional personnel. As I mentioned, you can have things like lab managers, research associates, and research assistants. These are people who tend to be permanently positioned in the lab. So they're often outstanding resources for training as an undergraduate. They also tend to know where everything is. So if you need to know where the Post-it notes are, they're probably the people who are going to know, because they've been there for the longest. And they often function to train undergraduates. So if you are put in a research placement, there's a strong possibility that you will be trained by professional personnel, which might include a lab manager or a research associate. Might also include a postdoctoral fellow, who is a person, as I mentioned, who already has their PhD or MD or another type of advanced degree, might actually have their own funding, and is interested in training for developing this mentorship portion of their professional resume, which is tremendously important for both professors as well as postdocs. Then you have the trainees, which are you guys. So those can include graduate students who already graduated from college, so would have a bachelor's of science or art or some kind. They tend to be the most stressed people in the lab because they are juggling a whole lot. So they often have teaching commitments, they have their own coursework, they have to produce an independent body of research that will result in being able to produce a doctoral thesis, and they often also train and work with undergrads. So there are a lot of advantages to working with graduate students. Many of you will be trained by graduate students. The huge advantage is they are extremely invested in the success of their research project, which likely translates to the success of the people that they work with. And finally, there are the undergraduate students. What this looks like, undergraduate research, varies from placement to placement. You can do any number of things. You can do a lot of grunt work. This is something that we often see undergrads doing if they just want to get a recommendation or they want to make a little bit of money. That's a really great way to do it. That tends to not, you end up doing things like preparing lab materials, or doing basic work that other people in the lab aren't doing and might not necessarily translate to publication. That's not the kind of work that we like to see EXITO scholars do. So we really want to place you in labs where you're going to have an independent research project where you're actually going to learn some basic research skills, be able to publish something and to present something. So part of what we do with you guys during year 2 with your enrichment programming is to help you understand how it is that you can contribute to a lab so that you're going to get a project that's going to result in you learning a lot and engaging in a lot of professional development. And that has a lot to do with the type of placement that we provide you with, so the type of research lab that you're put in, but also the impression that you make on your mentor. So if you make a good impression on the person who's spending time training you, they're likely to give you more responsibility, and that is more likely to lead to publication, presentation, and general professional development. And that's what we really want for you guys here. So that is the RLC. Do you guys have any questions about what your day-to-day might look like in a research placement? It's going to vary tremendously depending, as I said, on the relationship you have with your mentor, but also the type of research that you're doing. So if you're in the social sciences, you might be doing a lot of data collection. If you work in a wet lab, I see Rosie nodding her head. She does a lot of tissue culture, so she's actually in the lab. I don't know if you actually wear a lab coat or latex gloves, but she does all the science stuff that you see in movies where she's working with test tubes and petri dishes and the types of experiments that you think of associated with what's called a wet lab. All right, so how are you guys actually going to end up in a placement? You are going to follow this procedure, beginning with applying to the EXITO program and attending orientation. So good job, you've done that. So this little timeline, there's a lot of information on this timeline. I encourage you to revisit it often. It's posted on the EXITO website. This can answer a lot of questions, starting with, what am I supposed to be doing? So right now you're supposed to be attending summer orientation. You're doing that, so great job. Over the course of the next year, you'll participate in a gateway course, which is going to introduce you to research. So you'll start to understand a little bit more about what research is, some of the obligations that we researchers have around ethical concerns. You'll also learn a little bit about the nuts and bolts of how research is done, so some methodologies that are built around the scientific method, how to think critically in the lab, and also understand what it is that you can do with research experience. So there are a lot of different career pathways that you can follow. You don't necessarily have to be a principal investigator in a research lab. You can go to medical school. You can go into the allied health fields, to dental school, be a dental hygienist, a physical therapist, an occupational therapist. There are a lot of different options for which a little bit of experience in research will set you up. So during the sophomore year, I want you guys to, which is your upcoming academic year, I really want you guys to think about what it is that you want to get out of your research experience. So we've got this list of 5 things. We're going to spend a lot of time percolating on this list because a lot of things come out of a research experience beyond just the research skills specific to the project that you're working on. And the big thing that we focus on here in the EXITO program is mentorship, because from mentorship, you get all of these other things. A strong relationship with a person who's well experienced in a field that's related to a field that you want to go into is going to set you up to develop a lot of professional skills beyond precisely what you're doing in the lab. So you're going to learn how to speak professionally, you're going to learn how to interact with people, you're going to learn how to build relationships, which is networking, the next big piece of what you get out of a research placement. And through those networks of professional relationships, we hope that a lot of doors will open up for you in terms of opportunities that you have after you graduate from college. And that's really the purpose of these research placements, is to create opportunities for you so that in the future your lives end up looking like you want them to look. And then finally, also you can chase down your research interests. If you are interested in curing cancer, and I hope that someone in this room is, then you can work in a cancer lab if that's what you want to do, although you don't have to work in a cancer lab as an undergraduate to cure cancer. But chasing those research interests are very, very good for you. All right, so that means that during the sophomore academic year and at the very latest in the summer before your junior year, you will receive your research placements. So those of you at PSU should have gotten your research placements in the last couple days. If this means that you'll be matched with a research learning community, and how each institution does this is going to be specific to that particular institution. For example, here at PSU, we develop a large body of RLCs, as I know they do at all of the institutions, which we put descriptions of on the EXITO website. It's a good idea to begin perusing through those descriptions and deciding what types of things are most interesting to you so that you can begin developing relationships with the RLC leaders that you're most interested in working with. And that's something that you're going to do during the sophomore year. Here at PSU, we have what's called an RLC fair, which gives scholars a chance to interact face-to-face with their RLC leaders. That's a really important part of the process because personality fit is a strong predictor of success of the research placement. So we really like our scholars to have interacted with their RLC leaders in advance of being placed there. A really good way to get started on this process is to reach out to the research enrichment coordinator at your university, because they can match you to resources that are available for learning more about the RLCs that are available to you. If you have a faculty member at your institution who is not a part of the EXITO program, it may be possible for you to do your research placement with them. So that's something that you should talk to your REC coordinator, your Research Enrichment Committee coordinator, about, so that they can examine the possibility of incorporating your faculty of interest into the EXITO program. So this is a critical year for you guys. You really want to be thinking about what it is that you want to spend your junior and senior year doing in the summers between. so that you can end up with a placement that's great for you. Then at the start of your junior year, so it's going to be the month prior to the start of your junior year, you'll engage in something that's called the Summer Induction Program. So that is right here, and that's going to kick off your research placement where you'll engage in this paid research experience. So in that month, you'll have a chance to get set up in your lab, to establish these relationships, and to establish your project in the weeks that precede the start of the academic year, because once the academic year starts, you're also going to have classes, so you want to make sure you have a little bit of momentum with this research placement so that once other obligations are piled on top of you, that you're set up for success. So that's going to involve 16 hours of EXITO programming. So I got my cohorts mixed up when I said those of you at PSU should have your placements. That's cohort 2. You guys are cohort 3. So you're not going to get your placements until this time next year, around orientation next year. And then next summer, you'll engage in 16 hours of programming over the course of that month, so 4 hours per week. That just sets you up for success in your following academic year, making sure that you have your housing and all of the things that you need to engage in your placement squared away. And you'll also engage in about 16 hours per week of research with that group. So that's in the summer that precedes your junior year. Then during your junior year, you're going to spend 10 hours per week in the lab. So this is a great year to start working on these things, developing a relationship with your mentor and also developing interpersonal networks that are going to set you up to create opportunities after you complete your research placement, and of course the research itself. So learning about the areas in science and social science that interest you, and also building the specific skill sets that can get you there. And then in the summer, I'm moving around here. In the summer before your senior year, you're going to work full-time in the lab. That amounts to about 300 hours spread over the course of 10 weeks that you'll commit to both developing research materials in your EXITO programming as well as actually working in the research group. And then in your senior year, you'll continue with this 10 hours per week during the academic year along with your coursework to continue getting what you need from your research placements. So that is the research placement. Do you guys have any questions before we move on? Yes? So the question was, are all of these requirements
for Build EXITO?
Build EXITO. Are these requirements for Build EXITO? Yes. Engaging in the research component of Build EXITO is really the cornerstone or the keystone of the program, and so these are requirements. Other questions? I think it doesn't come on the video.
Oh. And I just had a question about the year 3 summer induction. You said there was 16 hours of work to do, but there was also 64 hours. So yeah.
Thank you for that question. So I think I maybe wasn't clear. So you have 2 types of programming with EXITO. The first type is time that you actually spend in your lab, and the second type is enrichment programming, which are workshops that we've designed to increase your success in the research placement. So 16 hours are enrichment programming, 64 hours is research. So thanks for that question. Yes.
How much development into our own, okay, don't like how that sounds. Okay, how much development into our own research is kind of expected of us, I guess, since we're going to be doing a lot of kind of research learning opportunities, how much do you guys kind of expect of us to be invested in ourselves on top of this, I guess?
So that is a great question. So how much personal development are you going to be investing into creating your own research program? The best questions are the ones that I seem to not have an answer for, and that's one of them. So that's really going to depend on the scholar and your research placement. So we see a broad range of levels of investment of the scholar into developing their own research program, from almost none to complete investment. So here at PSU, I see that scholars have a lot of control over how much they want to put into creating an individualized program, and so that is going to depend on the RLC that you choose and also your own level of investment. So yeah, so there's a lot of flexibility around that, but there's also a requirement for intention on your part if you would like to have a lot of control over the specific type of research that you do and the specific project that you do. That's something that you're really going to want to invest some time into. And also talk with your research enrichment coordinator. So if you're here at PSU, then I'm that person. And so I'd love to talk with you about that. Yeah. So great questions. Any other questions? Yes.
Are you able to put in more time into the research? There's obviously like a max amount you can be paid for the time you invest, but can you put in time afterward?
You absolutely can, and many PIs love that. So it's certainly not a program requirement for you to put in more hours than the program stipulates. However, people who love their work tend to want to spend a lot of time doing it, and I see that with many undergrads putting in more than this time. Yes, but it's certainly not a program requirement. So, and we understand that you guys have a lot of stuff going on, and so we don't expect you, in order to maintain good standing in the program, we don't expect that from you. Yes. Okay. More questions? So will the research placements be individual, or will you be placed as groups? Is that the question? That varies. So some scholars are placed in a cohort with a larger research group. For example, this year we placed 4 scholars in a single RLC. Many scholars are placed individually. That's certainly, you can make a request if you'd prefer to be placed in a larger group. That's something that we can definitely do for you. If you'd prefer to be placed as an individual, that's definitely something that we can do for you. So there's a lot of flexibility around what we can accomplish with these placements. It just requires some communication with your coordinator. Yeah. Yes. Hello.
Okay, thank you. So we are. Gives me a better feeling. So, anyways, we are going to be placed. Wow, we are going to be placed in many different like labs doing like researches. But I mean, like, how many fields are that we can get into in these labs? And what if like our interest was not in any of those? Like, could we develop and make like another like pathway, or is that even a possibility?
Yes. So that's another great question. I'm really glad that you asked it. So where can you be placed? And what if your research interests are not represented by the RLCs that are listed on our website that we've already developed? So we have a broad range of types of research that are available to you at all of the institutions. So we have anywhere from the natural sciences, basic sciences, clinical sciences, to the social sciences, things like psychology and community health. However, if you find that there's a faculty at your institution that you really resonate with and that you'd like to see developed as an EXITO RLC, then contact your research enrichment coordinator. It won't always be possible, but historically we've found that we've been able to develop most of the faculty RLCs that scholars have requested, because we find that a pre-existing relationship between the scholar and a faculty member really predicts a high amount of success in the placement. So that's something that I encourage you to do here at PSU. If you're not at PSU, talk to your research enrichment coordinator to see what's possible. Yes?
What did you say is the website for the PSU so that we can see the RLC?
Yeah, good question. Why don't I just go ahead and pull it up? It's on the Build EXITO website. So if you Google PSU Build EXITO, you're going to get our main site, which is very easy to find. And then on this top panel here, you are going to have a couple of different ways to navigate to this. You're either going to be able to meet under people, you're going to be able to meet your RLC leaders. And under this tab, there is another link to the research learning communities, which are organized by institution. So for example, if I were to click on the Portland area institutions, we see we have 4 broad categories, which are clinical science, biological science, what I call the natural sciences, chemistry, physics, engineering, environmental science, and then community health, social sciences. You go into each of those tabs and you'll see a listing of RLCs and a brief description of their work, which gives you enough information that you can continue Googling them to find out more.
If we're from a 2-year institution and we want to transfer to a 4-year institution, can we choose either to go to Hawaii or Portland?
This is a question that I am going to have to get back to you on. The question is, if you're at a 2-year institution, is there flexibility around which 4-year institution to which you transfer? My understanding was that that was predetermined to some degree, but there may be flexibility around what you decided a year ago. So can can you talk to me afterwards and I can give you the contact information for the program manager? Yeah. Well, I hope the opportunity that you have to talk to the RLC faculty that is following this presentation is going to get you guys really excited about research. It's really fun. It is, in my life, I found research, a career in research, to be this incredible balance between being able to do something that's creative and inspires passion and is intellectually stimulating, but also having a lot of job security and being well compensated for. So it's really, it's a great life. So I encourage you guys to stick your toe in with these research placements and see if it's the right kind of life for you. Yes?
So I'm just questioning about travel abroad opportunities and how that would interfere with the program.
Okay, so travel abroad opportunities and how that interfere with the program. There's a lot of flexibility around alternate research programs. So are you thinking about spending a year abroad? So spending a term or a semester abroad. Yeah, so you'd want to talk to your academic advisor at your host institution. There's certainly flexibility around that. And in particular, if you guys are going to be learning something when you're abroad that's going to develop you as a researcher, then that's something that we encourage. Yes.
So how much interaction will we have with the other build programs? Because I know there's like 9 other institutions doing the same thing.
How much interactions do you have with other build programs? So I currently don't have a good answer to that question. I suspect that there are opportunities that I'm not aware of, but you mean with like UCLA and as opposed to our partner institutions. I suspect that there are opportunities in the form of conferences and meetings in build consortiums, but that is something that you'd want to speak with your academic advisor about. So yeah, and also something that you can email me about, and I can connect you with the person who's going to have the answer to that. Yes.
So I've heard that we are going to make 4 choices, from our best choice, most interest to the one that we have less interest. So how could we make sure that we are going to get into the most interest field?
So how do you make sure you get the RLC placement that you want? You establish a relationship with the RLC leader. So we do our best to match scholars with their top choice. However, the ultimate decision on who is going to be placed in what RLC depends on the RLC leader. So it's a little bit like a job application. You can't guarantee that you're going to get the job that you want, but you do have a team of people that really want you to get the job that you want. So that helps. But I think your best bet is really to establish a strong connection with the RLC leader in advance of the placement process. So, yeah.
Does our senior capstone project have to be through Build EXITO, or can it be somewhere else on the PSU campus?
Does a senior capstone project, so this is a PSU-specific question, does a senior capstone project have to be through Build EXITO, or can it be via another project? I am going to have to get back to you on that. My understanding is that while we like it to be using your Build EXITO project because it double dips that effort, and we love to see you guys produce beautiful bodies of work that have emerged from this program, we want you to do things that you're interested in. And so if there's something else that you're more passionate about, then I certainly would support that, and I believe that is the program policy. But can I get back to you on that? Yes. Other questions? All right. So yes, one more question. Good.
So I just have a question about RLCs. Can you get in more than one, or can you be in one, but can you mentor or shadow another one that you're interested in?
Can you be in 2 RLCs? So we don't officially place people in 2 RLCs because the level of time commitment is so high. We find the students have a lot going on with academics and taking care of their families and then putting 10 hours a week during the academic year in an RLC. That being said, if you have time and you want to do it, go for it. I know scholars who have worked in 2 labs at once in the past, and that's been tremendously successful for them. So there are different formulas that require different levels of investment in different RLCs. Oftentimes the 2 RLCs will be collaborators with one another, which makes working in both a great idea. So it's really so much about the research process is individualized. So I encourage you to talk to both your advisor and your coordinator to figure out what the best fit is for you. So yeah. Okay, so are we moving on? So these are great questions. If you have more, send me an email. My contact information is on the Build EXITO website under People. And so if I can't answer your question, I will do my best to direct you to someone who can. All right, so let's talk about what it is that you're going to get out of your RLC placement. We have just 12 minutes, so I think we're going to skip the activity portion of this. But I did give you guys a handout, and I want you to really spend this year thinking about what it is that you want to get out of your RLC placement, because these relationships, you are being handed this golden opportunity to develop relationships with people who can open a lot of doors for you, who can create opportunities for the thing that you do after you graduate. So I want you, this is in the interest of having an awesome life. People can help you have an awesome life, and some of those people are the mentors that you've had in your life. Through Build EXITO, you'll get a bunch of mentors. You'll get a peer mentor, you'll get a career mentor, and you'll get a research mentor who will be, one of those people will be the PI or the lead investigator in your lab. They may set you up with another mentor in the lab who you'll work more closely with. That's going to depend on the size of the lab and the particular setup of that laboratory hierarchy that we're talking about. Throughout your career, you're going to have a lot of different types of mentors, professional mentors, personal mentors, colleagues who function as mentors, and all of these people can do a lot for you. So it's not just about teaching you how to cure cancer, if curing cancer is your goal. It's about developing a relationship with a person who can tell you what they've learned from all of their experiences in life, and what strategies have been most successful and what strategies have been least successful. Their strategies might not be the same as yours, but seeing what they've done, seeing what works for other people is always going to be helpful. So what we want the most from your placement is to have access to strong mentors. We really emphasize this over being placed in a particular research group that's closely matched with what it is that you think you want to do. Because when you develop the skills to communicate with people, and when you develop the skills to develop relationships that provide opportunities for you, you'll find that it's very easy to then translate those skills into your specific area of interest. So mentorship is really, really important, and having a good relationship with your mentor is something that we encourage. Because, in part, that leads to a lot of professional development. What is professional development? It means, it's really sort of a catch-all term for developing all of those skills that are going to lead to success in the professional portion of your life, which is going to include the opportunities that are available to you, which is not just working in a research group and analyzing data and producing scientific literature or social science literature. It's also this opportunity to participate in things like research panels, conferences, workshops, all of these places where you can learn how things are done in various different professional fields, and where you can also develop research skills. It's also going to enable you to develop what we call a science identity. And when I say science, I'm including all of those things that are covered by EXITO, the social sciences, community health, and the natural sciences. This is going to enable you to develop what's called a professional portfolio, which can be included things like a resume or a CV. And I know you guys already spent a little bit of time workshopping your resumes, and maybe that felt a little bit anxiety-provoking when I was a youngster, and I felt that I hadn't done a whole lot. I find that you guys have actually done a lot more than you think you have. My resume was pretty short, and I felt pretty anxious about it. So through these workshops, we're going to help you understand what it is that you have done, because you have done a lot, but we're also going to give you things to put on your resume. Through the course of working in these research groups, you're going to develop a lot of skills that you can put on your resume. You're going to present at conferences, you're going to publish literature, and all of those things look excellent on your resume. And it's a pretty big feather in your cap to graduate with a bachelor's and already have these things on a resume or a CV. So these are things that you can develop through this experience. And of course, you're going to learn stuff and develop career opportunities. So you have this relationship with a person who's already been successful in a career related to your field of interest. That person can do a lot of things for you, like connect you with other opportunities, and also create a community around professionals who have a lot of experience, through which you can do things like learn about graduate school, or get recommendations for graduate school, or get actual jobs where people actually pay you for the work that you do, which is, I think, the goal for all of us here. So how important is networking? It's really important. So you get a lot out of these relationships. As much as you get specific research skills from your research placement, you get these wonderful relationships with people who have relationships with other people who have relationships with other people. And chances are somewhere in that network, there is someone who is going to open a door for you that is going to take you to a place that you really want to go. So really think about how you are going to network in your research placement. In terms of where it is that you want to go in life and what sorts of things make you happy. Bringing us to research skills, so specific research skills. And I find that scholars often focus on the specific area in which they're interested in, and that's great. We encourage you to chase your passion. Passion is a key predictor of success. That being said, people change their minds all the time. So undergraduates change their minds so often from the time that they start college to the time that they finish college. And we want you to have that flexibility. So understanding what your passion is often involves chasing the wrong one for a little while. And so that doesn't mean that that process isn't going to be constructive. In that process of maybe researching in a field that you're not so interested in, you pick up these skills that are always useful. This one, statistics right here, it is really hard to get around using statistics, which may not mean anything to you now. What this means is how do you look at the information in the world around you and decide if it means anything? That's something that you're going to find is useful in pretty much anything that you do. You're also going to learn how to think critically, and you're going to learn a lot about the application of the scientific method, even if you end up picking seashells, selling seashells on the beach. All of these skills are extremely useful. There's nothing that you are going to do in life in which the process of doing science isn't going to benefit you, because it's about information. It's about how you break it down and extract useful information from what's around you in the world. So irrespective of your placement, I believe that you're going to learn a lot. So if you find that you are in a research placement and your research interests evolve, don't fret. You have the opportunity to change your placement, but you also have the opportunity to learn a lot in your existing placement. So I think I have time for this quick video from Neil deGrasse Tyson, one of my, I wish I knew him and could call him a mentor, but I find his philosophy towards learning to be really inspirational as an instructor. I think a lot about what he says about learning. Neil deGrasse Tyson has some interesting things to say about learning, in particular learning about the STEM fields, even if it's not your career pathway, which is a huge thing that you can get from the EXITO program. So let's take 2 minutes to the beginning.
Innovations and creativity in science, engineering, technology, and math will be the drivers of tomorrow's economy.
Jobs, 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 jobs.
Jobs. That's the word. In 4 letters, jobs. And if you are not a participant on that frontier, you will trail behind it and possibly get left behind entirely.
Most American kids opt out of the harder math and science classes, as you know.
So I think most people opt out of hard things.
And many of those jobs that pay $60,000, $70,000, $80,000, you need a lot of calculus.
You do.
You need math.
You do.
You need science. You need physics.
Math needs better marketing. I don't know how to hire a marketing firm or something. There are people who say, I'll never need this math, these trig identities from 10th grade or 11th grade, or maybe you never learned them. Here's the catch. Whether or not you ever again use the math that you learned in school, the act of having learned the math established a wiring in your brain that didn't exist before. And it's the wiring in your brain that makes you the problem solver.
Why did you become a scientist?
Since age 9, the universe chose me in a first visit to the local planetarium, the Hayden Planetarium in New York City. Ever since then, had you asked me what I want to be when I grow up, that annoying question that adults always ask, I still would have said, an astrophysicist.
So there's a value to students studying math and science at high levels, even if they don't want to be running the Hayden Planetarium.
Even if you don't want to become a scientist, minimum you should ask of yourself, demand of yourself, is that you become scientifically literate. Better yet, scientifically literate and mathematically literate.
Wow.
Because therein are the engines of problem solving in the world.
How does that connect to jobs and the bottom line, which is money?
Now you're valuable to an employer because companies want to innovate. And the companies that don't innovate, they wither on the vine. So the connection between STEM fields and financial stability of a nation is what needs to be established. That connection somehow is broken. People don't see it.
Why don't Americans see it, the connection?
Dare I say that maybe we're not trained to think that way? We're trained to think if you do A, then there must be B, cause and effect.
You think Americans understand that chain of events?
No.
Are they starting to?
No. You should be educated. And in the education, you should value science, engineering, technology, and math. If you do so, you get to innovate and invent new industries, new economies. If you invent new economies, everybody has jobs tomorrow. That's a chain of events. That's not A equals B. You've got to go through 3 other variables to get to D.
So I really love this video because it really emphasizes the process of learning and how much you get from it, and that's what your research placement is all about. It's about the process. It's going to change you as a person in building new skills that you didn't have before, and those are skills that you're going to be able to apply to anything that you do in life, which I hope is going to set you up for success, and I have seen that in my students in the past. So I believe in this model. Last thing, what do you want to contribute to your research learning community? It's important to note that the more you contribute, the more you're going to get back. When your mentors see that you're invested in the research and you're invested in this process of developing yourself as a mature scientist, what ends up happening is they're willing to collaborate with you as an individual, so giving you the ability to develop your own research plan if that's something that you're interested in, and also are willing to give you more responsibility, which is likely going to plant the seed for passion in science. So think about all of these things. Use the worksheet that I've given you over the course of the next year to think about what it is that you want from your research learning community so that you end up in one that you get a lot from. In addition to getting paid for this experience, you also get a lot, and how much you get is really up to the nature of the relationships that you establish with your mentor. So I'll leave you with one closing note about how to communicate with faculty over the course of the next year when you're trying to create these opportunities for yourself. And again, we have RLCs for you, and we guarantee placements. So if anything about this process stresses you out, don't fret, because the degree to which you engage in this is really up to you. However, if you know what it is that you want to do, and you know that there are specific faculty that you really want to work with, it's a good idea to reach out with them and be as professional as possible in these interactions. Making a good impression it's really this small investment, large reward. You can create a lot of opportunities for yourself by showing up, being appropriate in your communication with them, and this is one that I find that undergraduates often don't do with their emails. Address your emails. Don't start a professional email with "Hey, how's it going?" or "Hi." You always want to start formally with "Dear Professor" or "Dear some salutation." They likely will invite you to be less formal. In fact, I do. I always sign my emails with my first name because I like to be addressed by my first name. However, in that first email, in the interest of making a good impression, always address it professionally and sign it professionally with your full name, and really make that first impression. Show them what it is that you're capable of, and what that means is going to vary from situation to situation. But do think about the 3 Ps: being prompt, polite, and professional in your communications, because that's going to open a lot of doors for you in communicating with faculty. So that's what I have to say to you guys. I think it's time for your break. I don't want to rob you of your muffin time or your coffee time. So get in touch if you have other questions, and I look forward to interacting with you in the future.